Hello and welcome to The Comic Cage. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the collection The Infinity Watch, Volume 2. This volume collects from the 1994 issue 26 straight through to the end of the series with issue 42 from 1995. If you want the first 22 issues, you can pick up Volume 1. But as I explained in my Infinity Gauntlet Aftermath video, the main collections for the Infinity series collect all of those issues anyway, along with the stories they're actually tying into. If you want issues 23, 24, and 25, you either have to find them individually or get the Thor Blood and Thunder collection I reviewed last week, as that's literally the only collection with those issues. This volume primarily focuses on Warlock dealing with the 5 beings Eternity warned him about following the Infinity War, and the Watch's continued minimal effort to work together as a team, all while looming cosmic threats continue to hone in on them. So let's see just how well this unlikely band of misfits does, and take this away. The collection opens with some recaps of information learned during the Thor Blood and Thunder arc for those who don't have that collection. This information is just some of what the being without a soul, Count Abyss, was doing during that arc. Apparently, he took a stroll into the darkest dungeon to see this gross-looking blob creature and get a jug? A jug he claims is the key to defeating Adam Warlock. That's cool, I guess. The Watch, meanwhile, is blissfully unaware of the coming danger. Back from the incident with Thor, they are back to yet another unsuccessful attempt to unlock Maxim's past. This time, they do at least learn a little, including that Maxim had some interaction with a creature of the alien race, the Badoon. This is significant because they're the actual race, under the direction of the Church of the Universal Truth, themselves led by Warlock's darker half, the Magus, that wiped out the Xin Hubris. That's not a Dr. Seuss thing, that's Gamora's race. She's the last living Xin Hubris. Meanwhile, back in the States, that Senator Munson is making trouble for the Watch yet again. He already sent troops to the tropical island during the Infinity War aftermath, and again during the Infinity Crusade. Now he's sending the big dogs, the Avengers themselves, and they seem to have bought what he's selling as they all shout, "Warlock must die!" in creepy unison. Well, except for Vision, who's busy looking awkward in the back of the group. Meanwhile, back in the jungle, Count Abyss has sent this woman, Maya, with the oh-so-threatening jug. Whatever plans they had, though, are interrupted by the giant fist of righteousness. That is to say, Hercules punches her in the head and knocks her out. Gamora is nearby to go for a swim, in a swimsuit that was totally not at all an obvious attempt to get Adam's attention. She sees the fallen Maya, but when she runs to her, she is immediately ambushed by the Avengers. She only manages to knock out Vision, who is just really not on his game today, before being overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of Earth's mightiest heroes. Unfortunately for the Avengers, Maxim was watching Gamora for, totally non-pervy reasons, I'm sure. And he sees the ambush, so he's able to warn the others of the attack. The two groups battle, with Hercules using Maxim's now patented move, throwing Drax out into the ocean the way Maxim did in the Infinity War Aftermath collection. The fight goes poorly for the Watch until the Vision shows back up. Turns out he was only faking being knocked out because he knew Senator Munson had somehow hypnotized the rest of the Avengers and simply wanted to get off their radar until he could find a way to stop them. It seems Munson had planned this whole confrontation to force a point where either Warlock was killed or he and the Watch killed the Avengers. Either way, Munson counted it as a win, because if the Avengers die, it would anger enough people that Munson could rally a full army to attack Warlock. Now wise to his wicked ways, Warlock and the Avengers interrupt a meeting of the UN where Munson was attempting to do just that, having assumed the Avengers were dead as they hadn't reported back. Warlock pesters the Senator until he finally snaps and shows his true colors, revealing himself to be the Man-Beast? Huh. You know, honestly, I would have believed he was just some a-hole senator trying to make his career on vilifying the Watch. But sure, let's make him Adam's boring old nemesis Man-Beast. Adam beats Man-Beast to within an inch of his life, only stopped by the Avengers who promised to put the Man-Beast in supervillain prison. Warlock then puts back on his cloak like he's a pimp who just had to discipline one of his girls and tells the UN, "You've seen what I can do. I can be your friend or your enemy. You decide." And then he mic drops and pips out of there. With that mess over, the group is free to get back to the plot involving Maya and Count Abyss. Most of the Watch, rather wisely, don't trust Maya, making her so angry that all she can do is dance. And when she dances, I guess this happens. Apparently she creates something called unreality around her. Starlin probably planned for Maya to eventually join the Watch, otherwise I have no explanation for why this weird scene happens in the first place. Adam, it seems, is quite taken with Maya, to the point that he ignores the distrust of the others and completely buys her story of being part of a resistance movement against Count Abyss. Abyss, meanwhile, conveniently tells us the whole thing is a lie. So despite having an excellent history as a brilliant strategist, Adam is sold hook, line, and sinker and agrees to join Maya's rebellion. He even agrees to toast their union from the bottle of wine she brought with her. Now, I'm no expert in fine wines or anything, but I'm pretty sure nothing good is coming from the weird jar covered in creepy faces. So the two dramatically drink the wine, and it makes them fall in love? What? That was your evil plan, Abyss? Really? Abyss kidnaps Maya back to their home dimension, somewhere far down the dimensional corridor as the narration boxes tell us several times, leaving Adam lost like a lovesick puppy. He decides he needs to know more about his enemy, so he consults the Orb of Eternity, which suddenly can talk to him? Okay, sure. Abyss's history is mostly just some silly nonsense about finding, essentially, a genie called a Zalcor, who is addicted to some plant called Scrimblot, and Abyss basically agrees to regularly feed the Zalcor thing if it agrees to grant him great power. The power does come at the cost of his own soul, finally confirming what had long been suspected, that Abyss was indeed the being without a soul that Eternity had warned Warlock about. Adam makes the sudden decision to attack Abyss's stronghold, so the Watch comes along for the ride. At this point, Starlin left Marvel, leaving the rest of the 11 issues to be written primarily by John Arcudi. Also, I'm not sure why this cover says Special Soul-Searching Issue. The entire issue is basically just various people fighting Abyss, no soul-searching included. The fight goes pretty poorly, as can probably be expected, even with the help of Darklore and his very familiar Merlin. You may remember them from when Warlock met them during Infinity Crusade, but you probably don't. They eventually manage to defeat Abyss by taking one of the souls out of the Soul Gem and putting it in Abyss. Suddenly finding himself with a conscience again, after hundreds of years without one, Abyss has difficulty coping with his own evil ways, leaving him an easy target for Adam and Darklore. Surprisingly, all they do to defeat him is send him to another dimension, since his power grows weaker the further he is from his home dimension. That seems like a really bad idea to me, because he'll probably just find his way back, and once he does, he'll probably be at full power again, and you'll have to find another way to stop him. But nobody cares? Nobody? Just gonna throw a party and celebrate? Okay. Darklore and Maya suddenly announce they're getting married, despite there being no build-up to it whatsoever. Warlock realizes that Maya has to stay to rebuild her kingdom, and he has to return to his own dimension, I guess. So he simply blesses the union and walks away, a manly terror in his eye. Oh man, this image. It's just so... Wow. And what is that? Is that supposed to be stubble? What is he, an angsty teenager now? Oh man, this comic is so bad now. We move on to a story about some rando trying to take over Mole Man's empire for some reason, and a story featuring a semi-evil robot created by Doctor Strange that's trying to collect the Infinity Gems until Adam explains that it's pointless because they don't work together anyway. But primarily, the remaining stories focus on this guy, Zacchaeus, who goes around stealing souls for his master, Domitian. Domitian has told Zacchaeus that he's collecting the souls of sinners, killing only evil people, and because he's kind of an idiot, he totally believes him. Unfortunately for Zacchaeus, one of the souls he collects is the soul of Firelord, leaving the hero for dead on some alien planet. With what little life force he has, Firelord reaches out to Adam Warlock because, they met once, maybe, I guess, and explains the situation to him. So the Watch track down Zacchaeus, who realizes he's the bad guy after all, when he accidentally sets a building on fire during a showdown with the Watch, and they immediately move in to rescue the building's occupants. Aww, Drax saves a puppy. How sweet. So Zacchaeus turncoats and helps them face off against his master Domitian, who is keeping the souls in a giant machine that converts them into youth and superpowers, allowing him to turn from the old man he has become into a veritable Superman. Which, like, sure, whatever. While Warlock and most of the Watch face off against the near-invincible Domitian outside, Pip and Zack pop in on the machine and destroy it, reverting Domitian back to a helpless old man. Warlock and Zacchaeus manage to return Firelord's soul to him, placing yet another galactic champion in Warlock's stead. The remaining 3 issues just see the Watch fall apart. Moondragon was terribly injured during the battle with Dominion, leaving her in critical condition. Some fatherly instinct of Drax kicks in and he refuses to leave her side. The conflict between Maxim and Gamora suddenly spikes again and they fight. The brawl ends with Gamora quitting the Watch, giving up her time gem, which Warlock proceeds to give to Maxim. When Maxim puts the gem on his head, it finally unlocks his past. We learn he grew up in a future where Warlock had returned to being the Magus, and again conquered the entire universe, apparently so he could finally play the lead role in Hamlet. Maxim was trained his whole life to be sent back into the past to kill Adam Warlock before he could become the Magus, preventing this disastrous future from ever coming to fruition. Which, I guess fairly enough explains why Maxim attacked Warlock when he first saw him, but doesn't really explain why he randomly knew various superheroes of the Marvel Universe on sight, a thing we kept seeing him do at various points. Maxim fights Warlock, eventually managing to get the better of him and snaps his neck, ending the fight in the dramatic pose that Gamora first saw in her time gem back in the Infinity War Aftermath collection. It's a pretty nice little touch of consistency that I'm honestly surprised they bothered with. I guess as much crap as I give this comic from this time period, it seems that the creative team at least cared about it to some extent. Having finished his mission, Maxim teleports back to the future, and we learn that the Warlock he killed was just a mental projection inside his mind, and the actual Warlock is perfectly fine. But the team is still all broken apart. A tidal wave has struck Monster Island, destroying their base, and to make matters worse, some unknown entity came through and swiped all the Infinity Gems while Warlock and Maxim were fighting. What is Thanos watching there? Why does Gamora seem to be in a bikini during a tidal wave? Also, that's basically his daughter, so gross? Gamora decides to go off with Thanos in search of the Infinity Gems, despite his creepy videos. Drax stays with Moondragon to watch over her while she recovers. Pip, who cares? And lastly, Warlock, too, decides to go on a quest to find out what became of the Infinity Gems. Their fate is never really revealed in this comic, as that's where it ends, but I'll go ahead and let you know that this story occurred shortly after Marvel bought a company called Malibu Comics. And this was part of an attempt to merge the Malibu universe with Marvel's own primary universe, and a creature from those comics called Rune apparently took all the gems. But that's another story, so how did this comic do tying up their own loose ends? Well, I appreciate them bothering to explain Maxim's history, but that's about the only plotline that gets closed. The primary other plotline is Eternity's warning about the 5 entities. The being in need of a soul is clearly defined as being Count Abyss. The terrible good inside him was unquestionably the goddess from Infinity Crusade. The one who would touch his heart is probably Maya, considering the love potion. But that leaves 2 that are much harder to place. Maxim is probably one of them, but he fits either of the remaining descriptions equally. Zacchaeus could be one of the remaining, but for that matter, so could Thor. The comic doesn't bother to ever mention this problem again after Starlin leaves, and it's left up to the reader to decide. Another plot thread left open is the hero's Warlock was pulling into his debt. He said during Silver Surfer Resurrection and during Thor Blood and Thunder that he had a feeling he would need the help of mighty people in the near future. But if he did, it never came up in this comic like it seemed it was going to. And if either of those plots ever do get resolved, which I doubt, it didn't happen here, so let's go ahead and get to the breakdown. The end to Warlock in the Infinity Watch, which also brings an end to the Infinity-related stories for about 2 decades, is not a spectacular one. The final few issues from Jim Starlin feel pretty phoned in, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they were just outlines that he had submitted that someone else, uncredited, turned into the final scripts for the issues. Especially Starlin's last issue, which is much more strongly written during Abyss's backstory, with pretty noticeably out-of-character bookends on either side of that story. I already fully believe that someone else wrote the bookends and tweaked the narration to come from the Orb of Eternity. John Arcudi's writing is not impressive and even pretty bad at times. He drops Starlin's attempts at more subtle character development and goes back to the time-tested tradition of comic book characters just declaring their motivations outright, something I always found very annoying. Most of the art is fine. I don't really like any of it, but considering how bad a lot of the art has been in this series, I think by this point I'm pretty much used to it. I particularly appreciate Patrick O'Leary, who isn't phenomenal, but definitely seems to be trying to provide the series with consistency and is a definite step up from Tom Grindberg, who drew a lot of the comic previously. So in the end, I'm giving this series a recommendation level of low. I feel like it was trying to go some interesting places, but in the end it just kinda went nowhere. Another tragic victim of the mid-90s comic bubble. Thank you everybody for watching, and I'm glad to say I'm finally done with the entire Infinity series. When I started this, I didn't expect it to take me pretty much most of the summer to do. But as I was going through, I started realizing it was really gonna make more sense to cover each of the books individually. I hope you enjoyed coming along on the ride with me, and I hope to see you again next time, right here in the Comic Cave.